Evening all. So now I'm going to be reading from my most recent article I've written up the other day. This is about recent events, and it's called The Martyring of Peter Lynch and Why the Establishment Divides and Rules. Prior to his stepping aside in all but title, I recorded a video I have since removed as no longer relevant, due to the above captioned, Why I Hate Joe Biden. My feelings on Biden have not been dampened by news of his failing faculties. This is a man who insulted and belittled the British throughout his public life, yet had no qualms about plagiarising from British speeches. In the case of Neil Kinnock, almost the entire speech. Since then, we in the UK have had our own Biden in the form of Keir Starmer. I feel no need to publicise my feelings about him, as he is already the most hated PM since Margaret Thatcher. However, more concerning is that he is not only hateful, but dangerous. Alarm bells first rang for many of us when he answered Davos unequivocally to the question of which he preferred, that or Westminster. He then set about implementing easy solutions to complex problems, beginning with the so-called boat people crisis. He abolished the Tory-moted plans to send illegal migrants to Rwanda and let them pour in, settling them in hotels where a minority have found to have been physically and sexually violent. And then, of course, came the tragic and senseless events of Southport of July the 29th, when 3 young girls were murdered by a mysterious assailant. The authorities delayed revealing his identity, causing online rumours to spread that it was an illegal migrant or refugee. Groups identifying as patriots turned up at Southport to protest. Far-right groups like Britain First also were working to stoke up trouble, and this turned the protests into full-blown riots. Hotels were attacked, shop and house windows were smashed in. Yet instead of calling for calm as expected, Starmer only inflamed the crisis and law and order breakdown by calling for the arrest and lengthy imprisonment of the rioters, whom he unjustly branded far-right. Though criminals in their actions, most of the rioters had no connection to the far-right. They came from dysfunctional families in dysfunctional, poverty-stricken neighbourhoods, who, let down by the state, fell easily into the lies of the far-right in their need for an explanation to their problems, and a scapegoat to blame. Ironically, none of the actual far-right were apprehended for the role they played in the trouble. A video doing the rounds on TikTok and YouTube shows Britain First being politely moved on from a protest site by the police, but facing no action. The riots ended 4 days after they began. Then began the arrests. Those arrested ranged from men in their 40s and 50s to teenagers. The youngest was a boy of 12. Even those who had only protested peacefully were caught up in the arrests and sped up convictions, for which a proper hearing and trial were not afforded, denying the defendants their human rights to a fair legal process. Among this minority was a 61-year-old grandfather, Peter Lynch. Lynch's name was smeared by the press as a racist thug. All he had really done was hold up a homemade sign accusing the WHO, the WEF, and the UK government of being the New World Order at the protest, and to shout at the police as they guarded a hotel. There is no evidence of the racist abuse he is alleged to have yelled by police and media. Despite his age, he was sentenced to 2.5 years. His mugshot shows a man with a look of shock and disbelief on his face. On the 19th of October, he died of a heart attack exacerbated by the stress of his situation. Days previously, it had come to light that many jailed writers were being bullied by other more violent inmates and were given inadequate protection by the staff. In the days since the news broke, Peter Lynch had effectively been martyred by the white working class and conservative ideologues as a victim of a woke establishment. While the so-called far-right conspiracy theorists have a point regarding the aims of the Starmer administration and its place within organisations like the EU and the Bilderberg Group, etc., it has emerged that it has been grossly incompetent and short-sighted. Starmer, in spite of his expertise in law, has shown himself to be hideously inept at political leadership. In a plea to Hamas, he called for them to release the sausages, before hastily correcting to hostages. His Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, then tried to play the race card in his public condemnation of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. As a black man descended from African slaves, I know imperialism when I see it. He neglected to mention that Russia is one of the architects of the BRICS economy, set up to combat just the very imperialism Lammy was complaining about, or that Ukraine's forces are full of neo-Nazi white Slavic supremacists who would like to see Lammy's kind re-enslaved or crushed underfoot. In a desperate attempt to claw back support, Labour announced they were giving a cash top-up to working people. The problem here is you have to apply it via email, and the threat of scams puts many people like myself off doing this. What we need is more employment. Pinpointing right and left are two unlikely individuals, Tommy Robinson of the UK right and Sarah Wilkinson, supposedly of the left. The former is persecuted by the government for exposing police mistakes in immigration. The latter is persecuted by counter-terrorism for speaking out on the bombing of Gaza. A problematic individual, Robinson, whose real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, has made 2 major documentary films, The Truth About Hope Not Hate and The Band Silenced. I have watched both and found them to be truthful and surprisingly well researched. Robinson now faces jail for his silenced film, though the official line is it is for contempt of court. A clear indication of how a media crackdown by an ignorant and increasingly authoritarian government has begun. Why and how? You must know your British history to know the answer. Slavery, colonialism, and the Empire taught our people the lie that all white people were superior to darker-skinned people, allowing support for these imperial crimes to be committed in our name. Empire may have gone, but a new Western financial empire has taken its place, and the wealthy and corrupt of the political class are not about to allow us to stand in the way of that any time soon. There are those who provide hope. Though I do not share his stance on Israel, I am impressed by the activist Paul Thorpe's successes in uniting the country across racial lines to oppose the government and its many attempts to divide and rule in order to maintain its control of the populace. We are told we are a democracy. In reality, we are very much not that. But hopefully, we can make one yet. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this.